This is the Bringing Business to Retail podcast with today's guest, Steve Olsher.
Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast on SelenaKnight.com. Stay ahead of the competition by opening your doors to business experts so you can learn, grow, and be inspired. Passionate about bringing business strategies to independent retailers, please welcome your host, Selena Knight.
Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. As I record this, I am coming to you live from somewhat sunny Brisbane in Queensland. I've just wrapped up my live event, How to Get More Customers on Autopilot. And after finishing our event in Sydney, Elizabeth and I flew to Brisbane, spent the day with some amazing retailers, everything from a record store, yes, a vinyl record store, right through to someone who was selling trucks. And I think one of the biggest things that everybody took away from this event was not only how you can get customers on autopilot, but that you truly cannot build a business. You cannot scale your business when it is just you. You need to be constantly learning, testing different marketing avenues and testing different marketing strategies, seeing what works for your customer and for your product and what doesn't. And we had people at very, very different levels of business, people who literally were just starting out to people who had a 7-figure turnover. And they all took something very valuable away that they could implement in their business to help them get more customers without doing more work. I know, put the work in once and let it run on autopilot. That is what I love doing in my business. And I think it really cemented for me that what I truly love doing is sharing what I know to help retailers like you to streamline your business so that you don't have to work 12 hours a day, to stop the hustle, to start working smarter, to start implementing processes and systems and hacks into your business that will absolutely help you scale. When I went to the NRF show, that was back a couple of episodes ago, when I went to the National Retailers Federation big show over in New York, there were over 750 exhibitors on the exhibition floor. And I spoke to a lot of them because I'm constantly out there trying to see the processes and the apps and the systems that you guys can implement in your business. And the problem I had was I literally found just 3 businesses who could accommodate retail or e-commerce stores who are doing less than $10 million, which I know is a lot of you who are out there. The fact is, most businesses, they just don't care about you unless you're doing more than $10 million a year. Like, that seems to be the baseline. In fact, from what I can even tell, most retail consultants, people like me, they won't even work with you unless you have a 7-figure turnover. So if that's the case, who is out there being the advocate for you? I like to think that's me. I like to think that that's my what. That's what I love doing. I love being an advocate. I love seeing what's working in the market and segmenting it out so that you can just get the info that you need. And here on the podcast, I make sure that every single guest has information that they can share with you, where you are right now in your business. And today I've got Steve Olsher on. Now, he's actually known as the world's foremost reinvention expert. And you're probably thinking, well, what do I need to reinvent? I've got a retail store or an e-commerce store. Steve is actually famous for helping not only big corporations, but also independent retailers and solo entrepreneurs to become exceptionally clear on what their what is, the one thing that they were created to do. I really, really love this episode. Steve and I really dug into the differences between his philosophies and that of Simon Sinek and knowing your why. So we have a little bit of a fun conversation about that as well. But before we jump into Steve's very wise words, one of the most popular questions that I actually get asked at these live events is the topic of Facebook ads, because we do actually dig into how to write some pretty good Facebook ad copy in the workshop. I give you some plug and play Facebook ad scripts. But at the end of the day, you still need to take that copy and put it into an ads campaign, right? And I know that that can be a little bit overwhelming. Once you get it running, knowing what you need to tweak to make sure that you get the best return on investment, it can be, like Ads Manager can be a little bit confronting. And even if you mostly know what you're talking about, actually understanding which sections you need to adjust to make sure you get the best ROI. If there's nobody showing you, then how do you know? Last year, I ran a masterclass on how to create high converting Facebook ads. It was an online masterclass and over 1,000 people registered to attend. Now, after a lot of emails, so many emails, I have decided that I'm going to release it again for a very limited time. If you would like to know how you can create high converting Facebook ads, head over to selenaknight.com/marketing and grab your seat in this online masterclass. I'm just going to put it up for a limited time, so if it's something that you're interested, make sure that you head on over and you register and you watch. I'm going to share with you my top 3 strategies for creating those high converting ads. Head on over to selenaknight.com/marketing and grab your seat before it goes. Now let's jump into today's episode with Steve Olsher. Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Now, January is here, and you are probably being inundated with goal-setting podcasts and things in your inbox and in your newsfeed, all trying to get you to make this year the best year ever. But maybe, and Steve's laughing about that, but maybe you've done the worksheets, maybe you've bought a course, maybe you've listened to a podcast, and you've kind of realized that maybe your business isn't where you think it should be. And if that's the case, then you are going to love today's episode because I've brought on Steve Olsher, and he is known as the world's foremost reinvention expert. He's famous for helping businesses become exceptionally clear on their what. And that is the one thing that they were created to do. And this is really interesting to me because everybody talks about the why. So welcome to the show, Steve. This is going to be very intriguing.
Well, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
So first of all, I guess before we jump into what is the difference between the what and the why, how did you become the world's foremost reinvention expert?
I guess I'm just kind of the poster child for reinvention, right? So we teach what we are, I think, so to speak. And as someone who has reinvented my life and just numerous businesses over the last number of decades, I really personify, at least I think I personify the word reinvention. So helping others reinvent their lives just seems like a natural step on the path, if you will, of my entrepreneurial journey.
Okay, you cannot come along and say, I've reinvented my life and not tell us a few ways that, what are these incarnations of reinvention?
Yeah. So I've been an entrepreneur pretty much since I was old enough to rub a couple of dimes together and try to make a quarter out of it, from picking up a snow shovel and taking care of sidewalks and driveways or raking leaves or you name it. I mean, as a kid, I was, again, always just naturally wired as an entrepreneur. So figuring out whatever I could do there to make a buck or two. But my first real endeavor into the entrepreneurial landscape started as a nightclub DJ. So I DJ'd in a lot of clubs and made really good money as a DJ and did events and so on. And it seemed like a natural transition to open up my own club because I had built up a pretty good following, but I was 19 at the time.
That's a big investment, your own nightclub.
Yeah. So I'm 19 and I got this idea to open up my own club. And obviously being underage, I knew it couldn't be an alcohol infused club there. I mean, we're going to have to do something non-alcoholic, but where I was, there wasn't much for the teenagers to do. So I figured let's just cater to those 18 and under for the first half of the evening, maybe from 8 until 11:30. And then we'll close down and we'll clean up and we'll reopen at midnight for those 18 and over who didn't want to go home necessarily when the bars closed at 1:30. But they had their fill already. So they would just, good to go as far as hanging out and dancing and drinking non-alcoholic drinks and so on. So that was the basic premise and wrote the business plan for it and raised capital and ended up opening up that club just right before I turned 20. So that was the first true entrepreneurial endeavor. And that's led to all kinds of interesting things over the years. After that, I got into real estate development. I got involved in the .com world really early. We launched on CompuServe's Electronic Mall in 1993. Catalog.
1993. People didn't even know the internet existed back then.
Yeah, catalogs and the whole nine. I mean, that catalog company actually became liquor.com, like what you drink. in 1998 when I bought that domain. And since gone on to do a lot in the authoring and speakering and podcasting type space and do live events and you name it. I mean, again, I think I've done it over the years, but yeah, reinvention is kind of my middle name.
Oh, I love that. I love that the fact that you didn't seem to get attached to any of them, or did you? It sounds like you were quite happy to move from one to the next.
Well, sometimes it was a byproduct of circumstance, so to speak. In terms of when I was involved in the .com space, fairly early on, as I said, we launched on CompuServe's Electronic Mall in '93 and launched a fully functional e-commerce site in 1995. After we picked up the liquor.com domain in '98, and we were doing really, really well. I mean, millions of dollars in revenue, just absolutely killing it before the internet was an actual thing like it is now. We had the S1 filed and we were ready to go public in March of 2000. And of course, March of the year 2000 is when everything imploded, right? So it wasn't by choice that we didn't take the company public, and it wasn't by choice that the company imploded. But when everything fell apart, I literally walked away from the entire business in August of 2000. I didn't really have a lot of options other than to dig right back into something. I just couldn't rest on my laurels or lament what had happened. I mean, I had to keep the lights on and keep food on the table. And that's when I jumped into real estate development. And that went really well for a while. And then you probably know what happened to that industry in the late 2000s. And again, I found myself at that juncture of reinvention. So again, some of it was by choice, but a lot of it was just a matter of timing and not getting out early enough, I think. In some cases, and even being too early in other cases to particular markets where there were great opportunities. But that pot of gold, so to speak, was never reached because of timing.
I 100% agree with you there. I sit back and think that I've had a lot of, you have a lot of ideas and you write the business plan and wireframe things out. And I look back now, back in the day, and we're talking back in the early probably 2000s, like 2004, 2005. So again, the internet wasn't a huge thing back then. I had this awesome idea, and this has got nothing to do with the podcast, but it's a fun story. I had this awesome idea of having an app, and I don't even know if we had apps back then, but in my head it was an app. And I don't know if it happens in America, but here in Australia, lots of pubs have like Tuesday is steak night and it's $10, or Wednesday's chicken night and it's $10. So I had this idea that you could have an app, and it would locate where you were, and it would show you, it was for backpackers and things, it would show you where all the cheap meals were. That just came out last year.
You see, you're way ahead of your time.
Way too far ahead of the curve, 10 years ahead of the curve.
Yeah, way too ahead of your time. And, but it is interesting, right? I mean, I think one of the biggest differences between those who have ideas and those who really are successful in the entrepreneurial landscape is just the creativity that's involved with finding the right people to help support whatever that dream or vision is. So I think if you had been able to find someone who could build the app for you, I mean, you probably would have done it. It was probably just a matter of not having, access to the right person at that point.
Yeah, no Fiverr back then.
Yeah, no Fiverr back then. Yeah, exactly.
All right, but we're here to talk about reinvention, and I would love you to give some tips. So first of all, I want to know about this concept about what you're bucking the trend, the Seth Godin, it's all about your why trend, and you're saying it's about the what.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit. Well, that's a big call. The whole marketing industry is built on the why.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. So Simon Sinek put that book out, Start With Why. After I released my book, What Is Your What?
I think I just said Seth Godin, didn't I? Sorry.
Well, Seth Godin, he's involved, all that fun stuff too. But, it was interesting because I've been doing my own podcast since 2009 called Reinvention Radio. And we had Simon Sinek on. And we had a nice little conversation about the why versus the what. And, he'll tell you it's a semantical difference. I think there's actually a very big difference between the two. In my way of thinking, by my definition, your why is something that you can choose, right? Like you want to help starving children in Africa, or you want to provide clean drinking water in India, or you want to take care of your family or those closest to you. And so really the why to me is the driver behind why you do what you do.
Yes.
And that is something that is external, and it is something that you can choose versus your what. And I'll just grab this real quick so you can see it. But when you look at the cover of the book, What is Your What? I mean, we've got one graphic element on there, which is the DNA strand, right? Because in my way of thinking, your what is really that which has chosen you as opposed to that which you have chosen. So I believe that your what is internal. And I mean, you can spend a lifetime in denial about what it is, but reality, as I sit here, is that your what is really reflective of how you're most naturally wired to excel. And that to me is a huge distinction between the why, again, which is external, by my way of thinking, my definitions here, and your what, which is completely internal and already in your DNA.
Okay, so let's dig on that a little bit more. So is the what a skills-based thing?
So here's the thing. I've been struggling with how I'm naturally wired to excel and what it is that I'm most fired up to do in my life for most of my adult life. I mean, as I've reinvented my life and jumped from point A to point B, I mean, and C and D and E and F, right? There's always been this question as these intersections of life come up, which is, what is it that I really should be doing here that best complements who I am and how I'm naturally wired to excel. And when I've done various modalities in the past, like the what colors your parachutes and the Myers-Briggs and these sort of things, they all really left me with more questions than answers. So I thought, there's got to be an easier way here to figure out what it is that you're truly good at and give you some sort of framework that can help you hit the ground running. I mean, again, what color is your parachute? Like you've got 4 conversations going on in a room. One corner is about business. One corner is about sports. One corner is about finance. One corner is about technology. It's like, which conversation do you choose? And like, the only thing that I'm thinking is, where's the door? Like, how do I get out of this room? It's
a boring
like,
bunch of people,
right? Like, I don't care. Like, get me out of this room. And like Myers-Briggs with their ENTFs and their JTPGs, or I'm just thinking like WTF, it's like, who cares? Like, what difference does that make? Right. So as I began sitting down and really thinking about how I can create a framework that's much easier for people to figure out how they're naturally wired to excel and what they can do with that knowledge, it became very clear to me, especially after teaching what I call the Reinvention Workshop, which is a live event that I taught for years, and working with people at the Reinvention Workshop. It just became really clear that there's just 3 pieces of the puzzle that you got to figure out. One is your core gift, and that reflects something like communicating or teaching or healing or enrolling or protecting. It's just that core gift that comes most naturally to you, almost like it comes as natural to you as breathing, right? Like you're just a natural communicator, you're a natural healer, you're a natural entertainer, right?
And I was thinking like archetypes. You know how we do branding archetypes?
Sure.
In my head, that's kind of what it correlated with. So, in the branding archetype, I'm the ruler, which is the leader, and also the hero, the person who spurs you on. And that to me correlates back to what you just said, because that's what I'm really good at. I'm just really good at helping people get their goal, but also kicking them out the ass when they need it.
Yeah. So motivating might actually be your core gift.
Yeah.
Right. And there could be a secondary gift like teaching or something of that nature that complements that.
What's yours?
But once you understand, to me, it's communicating. I mean, I've always been, so communicating has always been my core gift. I've got secondary and tertiary gifts, but communicating is definitely going to be 51%, if not more, of that equation. So there's always going to be one dominant gift, even if it's just slightly dominant, right?
Yeah.
So once you understand what your core gift is, you then have to be clear on the vehicle, right? So what is the primary vehicle that you will use to then share that gift? But those 2 pieces of the puzzle are all well and good, but until you really understand the people that you are most compelled to serve, it's kind of like a tripod, right? From the standpoint of, if you take out any one of those 3 legs, the equation just doesn't work. And most people will go a lifetime without understanding one piece of the puzzle, let alone all three. So, no worries, no harm, no foul if you're still trying to figure out what your gift and your vehicle and your people are here. But like, you can know what your gift is, and you can know what the vehicle is that you use to share that gift. But if you don't really understand the people that you're most compelled to serve, that doesn't work, right? Or you can know who your people are, and you can know the vehicle you want to use to potentially share that, to serve those people. But if you don't know your gift to really lean on, again, all of these, it doesn't work either, right? So, I mean, you can run a 6 ways from Sunday, but the bottom line, really, as I look at it, is if you have clarity around the what is your what framework, it really does give you the opportunity and the power to start hitting the ground running and start serving those people who you're naturally drawn to work with, right? So it's a much simpler process than I think a lot of other folks make it out to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can identify the gift, the vehicle, and the people, you're in for some real magic.
I feel like maybe this is just me, but I feel like the gift and the vehicle would be easier than the people. So could you give us some examples of who the people are? Because I'm sure that because retailers are listening and e-commerce, they're like, my people are everybody. Like, people who want to buy stuff is my people.
But that's not true, right?
I know that's not true.
I mean, with very rare exception, right? I mean, unless you've got Amazon, which caters to almost everyone of almost every demographic, that's so rare, it's not even funny, right? I mean, that's why there's one Amazon. For the rest of us mere mortals, we need to, especially in the retail business, and I've got experience in the retail business. I mean, my grandfather started Foremost Liquor Stores in Chicago back in 1939. So, I mean, my family's been in the liquor business.
And you've had e-commerce businesses.
And I've had e-commerce businesses, and I still have an e-commerce business. I mean, when you come right down to it, I'm still in the e-commerce world. I just do a lot of stuff through email marketing and so on, but people are still going to a page to buy something.
Yeah.
So I still do it. But yes, I think that unless you have clarity around the people that you're most compelled to serve, it's really hard to create anything that serves them effectively, especially in retail. When if you try to do too much for too many, that's going to make it overly complex. In my way of thinking, especially in retail, you're much better off being crystal clear on one particular segment of the population that you're truly compelled to serve, and serving them in as many different ways in that vertical as you possibly can, as opposed to trying to move outside of that space.
Yeah, and I see that so often when people are trying to cater to everybody, they end up with so much inventory. But of course, then their marketing message is off, because what's appealing to this person, the marketing message is not going out to. So it's very easy to think if I just get more stuff, I will get more sales and more customers. But in actual fact, I agree with you. I think if you can niche down, I've seen so many businesses that sell literally one product that are making a lot of money.
Well, and here's my way of thinking. And so I have a year-long coaching program where we bring people in and we guide them and hold them accountable and do done for you services and so on. But one of the things that I tell folks, especially those who are a bit scattered, is look, let's take, using your terminology, let's take one SKU or one general line of SKUs to 100K. And once we get to 100K, if you want to add another SKU or a complementary line of SKUs to that, then by all means have at it. But the odds are really good that if you focus on your messaging, you focus on your marketing, and you really hone in the customer experience, you can still take that original line of SKUs to 250K. And 500K and beyond, right? So it's just very tempting to want to go outside of that initial line of SKUs. But at the end of the day, you can make a lot of money, and really you can make much better margins.
Yeah. Especially when you start getting into economies of scale.
Exactly.
I don't know that any client I've ever worked with has more SKUs now than when we first started. Most of them have significantly less.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the economies of scale is huge.
Yeah, once you start getting the numbers up, you get cheaper rates. So, okay, we're going to get into this, but guys, can I just say that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I did get a message to say you're giving this book away for free.
Oh,
Is that true still?
you're talking about what is your what?
What is your what? Yeah.
Yeah, we actually, so it's a New York Times best-selling book, and we give away the entire book at whatisyourwhat.com. So yeah, you can grab a free copy of the entire book.
That is so generous. Thank you. So now that people are going to go get your book, because it's going to be super interesting, and I think it's very easy to get caught up, like you said, in all those profiles and goal setting and everything else. But if you don't actually know what it is you're doing and who you're serving and what your gift
Yeah.
is, then it's going to be a lot harder. So say people have done, they go through and they do the book and they realize that actually my gift is something very different to what I thought. How do you recommend that people start to transition into that new person?
Yeah. So there's a lot of hours in the day, and there's really only two ways to use your time. You can spend your time, or you can invest your time.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens for many people is they spend their time doing something that doesn't truly put fire in their soul. And then they come home and they spend their time doing things like binging shows on Netflix, or, looking for, I don't know, things online. And I mean, you name it, right? I mean, they're spending their time. So one of the things that I would wholeheartedly recommend is just begin keeping inventory on where your time is actually going, right? Because reality is there are a lot of hours in the day that you can use, and in this example here, you can invest in terms of moving towards let's just say moving down a transitionary path, where before you go to work, you could dedicate a couple of hours to fulfilling your what and bringing that to fruition. You could have time after work to really focus on what your what is and share that with as much strategic abandon as you can. And of course, then you have the weekends for most 9-to-5 warriors, or those who have other endeavors that maybe have different hours than that. And that's all well and good, but where do the other hours go? So the way that I really like to think about it is, let's just let someone else fund your transition. Don't cut off your nose to spite your face, right? I mean, don't kill the cash producing cow. Let's just simply use the hours that we have in a much more productive way. And I like in the process to kind of like a recipe mixture, if you will, right? Where like right now, 100% of your income is derived perhaps from what it is that you don't really want to be doing, or it doesn't really put fire in your soul. Now you start sharing your what with strategic abandon. You get folks who say yes to whatever it is that you put forth in terms of some sort of offer, some sort of product, program, or service that is for sale, so you can begin generating revenue from that. And now it shifts to 99.9% of your revenue being generated from what you don't want to do, and 0.1% being generated from what you do, right? And as you focus more and more on what you do want to be doing, more and more revenue is generated, and that shifts to 90-10 and 80-20 and 70-30 and 60-40, et cetera. And you'll find that there's a point in time where enough revenue is being derived from your what that you can cut the rope. But I wouldn't do it until then.
No, I think that's very, very wise advice, because it's very easy. I don't know, maybe it's just an entrepreneurial thing, but it's very easy for the entrepreneurs that I see to just, throw the baby out with the bathwater and jump into a new thing, even though they maybe haven't got the financial part. And obviously retail is probably a little bit different, but I don't know. I see a lot of people just saying, putting their hands up and saying it's time for the next thing.
So here's what I would do from a retail perspective, right? I mean, if you're tied into a lease and you have a physical presence somewhere, and I'm making the assumption that a good portion of folks have a retail presence, meaning a physical presence somewhere. Is that somewhat accurate? Yes?
I'd probably say 50-50.
50-50.
50-50 to e-commerce.
Even better, right? Because so here's the thing, right? With e-commerce and not having a physical brick and mortar presence somewhere, it's so easy to just start another e-commerce endeavor, right? I mean, today, like, we're not talking 1993 when I launched on CompuServe's Electronic Mall. I mean, we're talking right now, where literally all of the tools that you need are housed in a number of different platforms that you can leverage, right? And it's not nearly as complex as it used to be.
There's pretty much no barrier to entry.
Right, which is a double-edged sword as well.
Very much
but
so.
Yeah, but look, the truth is you can, in your, I don't know if you want to call it your part-time or your off hours or whatever it might be, you can easily build a second store, a second online store, or a third online store, or a fourth on. It doesn't matter, right? Matter of fact, I would probably say build 10 of them, throw up 10 SKUs on each of them, and see which starts getting the most traction, right? Because it's just so cheap and so fast and so easy that if you truly want to transition out of what it is that you're doing, you need to start moving in that different direction now.
Yeah.
And so find the most popular products in that particular niche that you want to serve and start out on the affiliate front and just take don't inventory it, just take an affiliate commission. Let's just see what gets some traction.
It's like you said, the barrier to entry is so low that I think you need to be smart about it, right? You don't just go out and put 100 products up. Go and read the book, really dig down into these 3 areas and work out what, if you want to be in retail, what product is going to serve.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And again, once you're clear, and I would say you could just start with the people, just start with the people that you're most compelled to serve. And once you are clear on who those people are, you could then easily create an e-commerce store that has 10, 12 SKUs that serves them, and literally just you can just run with it in that direction. And again, you can run down that path enthusiastically until until it's proven otherwise.
Can you give us any examples of some people who have taken what you've written and implemented it and had really good success?
Yeah, it's so lots of fun stories to share. Of late, I've actually been focusing pretty heavily on podcasting, from the standpoint, first, of really helping people connect with podcasters who are looking for guests just like you to appear on their shows. And so we started an event called the New Media Summit, where we bring in 40 top podcasters, and we have 150 attendees that come to that event, and they have the opportunity to pitch the podcasters on who they are and what they do, and they literally get booked on the spot. And what that event has really done is it's really opened the eyes of folks to the power of this medium, and the fact that maybe they should start their own show. And so there have been a number of people that have gone through the summit that first needed to really figure out what their what is. And once they're clear on their gift and their vehicle and their people, it then became a natural next step for them to launch their own podcast, right? So we help them to do that, and that's part of what we do as well. But for example, there's a woman whose name, it's a wonderful name. Her name is Emerald Green Forest.
No.
Yes. And it's a chosen name, I'm thinking.
Right.
But Emerald became very, very clear that the people that she's most compelled to serve are powerful men who are more on the executive level, who on one hand have so much of what people desire out of life, but on the other hand, they're emotionally bankrupt, right? I mean, they're not really living in their power from a personal level.
Yeah.
And so she started a show as a result of our work together called Men on Purpose. And so she gets to sit down with these amazing men who have their own struggles and are doing great things here, but are really struggling in various areas of their lives. And she kind of coaches them, right, during the session, and helps them work through whatever those struggles and trials and tribulations are. And then, of course, she allows the audience to connect with her if they want some of that magic as well. And, of course, she then has the opportunity to turn some of those guests into clients also, who then want to work with her on a more extensive level to really solve those issues and come up with a solution that really allows them to live more in their power. So that's been an interesting transition, watching her just really kind of struggle to figure out exactly who it is that she's most compelled to serve, to being very clear that she is just absolutely driven to help successful men on the business front become more successful in life. And she's got, $60,000 yearly program that she puts out to folks, and has been doing really, really well with that since she launched her show.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I think we
Yeah.
could talk about this for quite a long time, because I have about another 20 questions to ask you, but I'm very mindful of the time. And I feel like if I start asking more questions, we're going to end up speaking for hours. So I'm going to finish off there. And if you could please just remind us, because I am going to be heading off to get a copy of the book, because
Yeah.
I feel like I have a bit of an idea, but I think the book might give me a little bit more clarity on just refining myself and my brand, I think, as well.
For sure.
So we can get the book at whatisyourwhat.com. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. You just go there, you opt in. We give you the entire book for free. So I'd love to hear from you guys what you think of the book, and not even what you think of the book, just more in terms of like what's opened up for you as you've gone through it, and really where you started and where you finished in terms of your thinking around maybe what your what is and who you're most compelled to serve.
I love feedback. Is always good. Feedback is what lights my life up.
Uh-huh.
And if people want to know a little bit more about you, where can we find you?
Probably the best place is just Steve Olsher, Olsher, steveolsher.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I feel like this is so much more useful than another goal-setting podcast for 2019.
Yeah. Well, this is probably the biggest goal that you could put in place for yourself, is really just figuring out how you're naturally wired to excel, and then pursuing that with strategic abandon, for sure.
For sure.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selenaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selenaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.